Just want to thank my family for their love and support and encouragement through this time. This award means the world to me. It has been a long journey, a hard journey, but I made it and I finished. Oh, sorry. Hey, don't make fun of my Bigfoot medal. This is my 2020 Bigfoot, the social distancing champion running challenge. I don't run, I walk. 5K walk last year. Hey, it's a medal with Bigfoot. What's all this about? Huge accomplishment last night. My name is Paul. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome for the first time. If you're coming back, thanks again for stopping back. Really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to the channel and share it with others. Anyway, why am I being weird? Why am I being loopy? Last night, big accomplishment. The Stand, Stephen King, officially now probably the longest book I've ever read. This was the complete unedited version, 1,437, 38 pages, something like that. This was a commitment. I finished, and I know what you're going to say. If you've watched the channel, I love Stephen King. He's now up here on the shelf with Doctor Strange and Gandalf. This was so good. Come on. Is it long? Yes. Is it good? Yes. So, The Stand. What's it about? If you haven't read it or haven't watched either one of the TV adaptations, which I haven't yet, which now that I've read it, I can. So I'm happy about that. The Stand. We have a virus called Captain Trips. It's a flu virus that was produced in a military lab. It gets out of the lab and quickly spreads and wipes out 99% of humanity, leaving a very small group of survivors. These survivors begin having dreams and nightmares. Dreams about an old woman named Mother Abigail. Nightmares about the Dark Man, Randall Flagg. These dreams cause these individuals to be drawn to one or the other. Randall Flagg ends up being stationed out in Las Vegas, and he attracts his followers to him. Mother Abigail is in Colorado, and she begins to draw, well, she doesn't do it so much as people are drawn to her to come and find refuge with her in the middle of basically a post-apocalyptic, post-virus apocalyptic world. And really the first half of this book, if you are a fan of The Walking Dead, the first two seasons especially, this is right up your alley. I mean, this was like reading the first two seasons of The Walking Dead, just take out the zombies, where you have a small group of survivors trying to figure out how to survive together, how to reestablish life, and they go on this journey to begin to group up together. And so you are introduced to a lot of characters, especially right out of the gate. And I've seen a lot of videos talking about just how hard it is to keep up with all the different characters. And yes, it is, but again, it's no different than something like The Walking Dead, or I've never watched or read Game of Thrones, but I know there's a lot of characters in that, and a very similar premise. So yeah, there's a lot of characters, but you find out quickly, the first half of the book, so again, there's a lot to go. The first half of the book, you quickly find out the core group of characters that you're going to end up paying attention to. And initially, it can be hard to remember, okay, who was left off where, because it kind of takes a chapter and focuses on this character, the next chapter, another character, and by the time you circle back around, it takes you a second to remember, okay, where did we leave off with that character? And there are times where he begins a chapter, picking up with that character, and you're like, wait a minute, I don't remember them getting to that point, and they didn't. He starts you there, and then he goes back and explains how they got there. So that aside, it's not that hard to keep track of them. Again, the core characters. And as the book continues, they add more characters. Some are more important than others, but again, you quickly begin to realize the characters that are worth paying attention to. So, around the halfway point, I would say we really begin to focus on establishing Mother Abigail, who she is, and we begin to see people assembling to her. We see people rallying to Randall Flagg out in Las Vegas, and we see these two different communities begin to flourish. Again, if you're a Walking Dead fan, think of Rick Grimes and his group, and think about Negan and the group of the Saviors, and you kind of get that similar principle developing. So again, don't want to give a lot away, just kind of the overall format of the book. And so then as we get into the second half of the book, we begin to see kind of this growing tension within especially the Mother Abigail community, of people trying to work together because they're trying to reestablish society. And the group in Las Vegas with Randall Flagg, they are just preparing for wiping out anyone who's not on their side. And inevitably, obviously, it's going to lead to a collision between the two communities, between the two sides. So, all that being said, is it long? Yes. Is it worth it? Yes. There are so many great takeaways. I mean, this is in the last quarter of the book, but it's not going to give anything away, but just listen to this. Because there were, love didn't grow very well in a place where there was only fear, just as plants didn't grow very well in a place where it was always dark. Oh, that's profound. And there are some profound statements shared in this book, especially towards the end. I know that Stephen King wrote a new ending for the CBS miniseries, so I'm going to have to go and watch that and see how that ends. All that being said, the ending. Wow. I'm still, again, I finished this last night and still really chewing on how this ends, because Stephen King really uses this to ask a very profound question by the time we're done. And I'm still kind of wrestling through that. And I've got to say, because this was basically a fast-spreading pandemic that wipes out the world, if you read this last spring, that would have hit a little too close to home. But it's interesting that being a year removed from the start of COVID and all that, and seeing the question, I think that the main question that King asks of the reader in this is the perfect time to read this book in light of the question I feel that he asks at the end. Because I think about everything that's some of the main events we've seen in the world since he wrote The Stand. The question's still a good question, and I won't tell you what the question is. You have to read to find out. Anyway, there are obviously a lot of, I won't say obviously, but a lot of spiritual connections. Mother Abigail is a woman who is deeply devoted to God and has this very close connection to God. Randall Flagg obviously is essentially the Antichrist type character. We see a lot of the characters wrestling with questions of faith and spirituality and what they believe, what they don't believe. A lot of things that happen, is this God? Is this somehow divine? Is this coincidence? Is this chance? And so we get this beautiful exploration, I can talk, of these characters trying to process to what extent is there something supernatural, to what extent is there something of God in the middle of all of this. And so if you've ever wrestled with the question of, where is God in the middle of massive tragedies, and there's a lot of issues that come out here that's going to help stir that fire of wrestling with that question. So I know Stephen King's not, to my knowledge, he's not a Christian or a man of faith at all, but the issues he brings out in here, I feel, are more profound than what you find in a lot of Christian-based fiction books or anything of that nature. So, in short, The Stand, Stephen King. Again, talk about Stephen King in his storytelling. I was, by the time I finished this book, I was exhausted. Not because I was reading a long book, but because I truly felt like I was in this life and death survival journey with these characters. And because the book is so long, and because it took me like almost 3 weeks to read it, I wish, I'm kind of ashamed of that, but uh, no, I'm not. Because spending that extra time with the book, I really felt like I had spent significant time with these characters. And really, the fate of some of the characters hit more closely to me than I anticipated. And hopefully it's not a major spoil, but one of the concerns I had with this was that when all is said and done, all the good guys are going to get together and celebrate that they won. It's not how it ends. I will give that, and by that I mean, I'm not going to say the good guys won or the bad guys won. I'm just saying that not every character is going to make it. And my fear was that it was going to be this cheesy ending where all the good guys survive. They don't. Won't tell you who does, won't tell you who won't. No character is safe. And I think that makes this an especially tense read, because you know that there's no safe character. There's not one character that, oh, nothing's going to happen to them. You don't have that guarantee. And he establishes that and does it very well, and writes some amazing characters that you feel deeply attached to, and you genuinely want them to survive. You genuinely want them to make it through. And those who don't, you generally feel like you've lost a friend. And so, would I say this is my favorite Stephen King book so far? I might need more time on that, but probably not quite as, maybe action's not the right word. There's not a lot of action, but right now I'll say yeah. Does it beat out The Shining? It just might. I'll have to think about that more. But right now, maybe just because it's so fresh, I'll give it a few days. But I really enjoyed this, guys. And if you haven't read, again, I know I talked about this with Colorado Kid, but if you're not into the horror stuff, there are some gruesome things that happen. And yes, it's in the horror genre, like I guess most post-apocalyptic things might be. This isn't your typical horror. It's a very different kind of horror. It's more of that post-apocalyptic survival type horror. Do you want the full unedited version? If you're going to read it, why not? What's a few extra pages? Fantastic book. I am so glad. I was so intimidated when I picked this up at a thrift store. Wasn't sure when I was going to get to it, and finally decided to take the plunge, and I am so glad I did. I'm going to go ahead and watch the miniseries. I struggle to think it's going to come anywhere near to how satisfying this was, but I'll watch it. Wow, so good. I really encourage you to read it. I really think you're going to enjoy it. And if anything I said sounds remotely interesting to you at all, I don't know if I was too descriptive, not descriptive enough to help you. But again, if you were a fan of the first couple seasons of The Walking Dead, definitely. You don't get the zombies, but you get the general survival feel of strangers becoming family and trying to survive together. So, amazing book. Amazing book. So that is completed. Where do I go now? Well, I need a quick read after that. So I am going to begin today, later on today, Mallory by Josh Malerman. This is the sequel to Bird Box. So that isn't going to be much of a commitment at all. I'm going to hit that one next. And then, not that this is a long book, but his writing style is a little more meaty, and so this might be a little bit slower read, but then go on to Dune Messiah by Frank Herbert, the follow-up to the Dune, the first part. I decided I'm just going to go through the Frank Herbert series in order, and then I'll go back and pick up his son's fill-in books. So those are the next two books on the docket now that I'm done with The Stand, and honestly, I just kind of feel like taking some time and just soaking in the beauty that was The Stand. But I love to read, and so before I go to bed tonight, I will have started Mallory, so I can't help it. But anyway, The Stand by Stephen King, outstanding book. Love it, love it, love it. Loved every part of it. Yeah, it slowed down at parts. Didn't matter. Worth it, loved it, encourage you to read it. If you did, let me know down below. What did you think? What were your thoughts on The Stand? What did you think about the miniseries? If you watched the older version or the brand new one, what did you think about those? Yeah, let's talk about it down below. But thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you back here next time with a review, hopefully, of Mallory by Josh Malerman. Have a great day.